Good afternoon, folks. Just wanted to check in to make sure my video and audio is working okay.
Hi. Looks good.
Great. Can I just do a quick screen share as well?
Yes, absolutely.
Looks like I need the permission.
Oh, sorry. That would help. Okay, try again.
Okay, screen share. And okay. Here we go. All right. Is it sharing the YouTube?
Negative. Recording. And Victoria, are you signed in on the back end on Facebook just to make sure it's working okay?
Yep.
Thank you. All right, let me know when you see streaming. I'm gonna get us started. Okay, so good evening. We're welcoming tonight Aaron Reinert from Safe Tech Solutions, and I will let Aaron introduce himself because the introduction is quite the introduction. So I'll let him share what he wants to share about himself when we get started. Just a couple quick things for announcements. So we are streaming to Facebook Live. Like I said, we're still piloting this program. For those that maybe don't need the continuing ed credit, or someone in leadership that says, you know, I don't really need the CE, or I might have to get up and leave in the middle of the webinar, you can join us Facebook Live on our Facebook page through the center, and you can participate. Victoria is actually monitoring that. Comment boxes are up, so you can join us that way as well. But just bear in mind, no continuing ed happens through Facebook. Couple things through the center. We have two workshops coming up in October. We've got the Certified Ambulance Documentation Specialist class that's coming. That is a certified class offered through PWW, Page, Worth, and Wolfberg. They'll be coming virtually. The cost of the course is $20, and you will walk away with a certification. And then we also have an EMS sustainability course that they're going to be offering the following day. You're welcome to attend both. Each course is a cost of $20, and each course is virtual. If you have any questions, feel free to stay on the webinar tonight or shoot me an email. Next month's webinar, we're going to be doing quality assurance and improvement. And I highly recommend joining us. We're going to take a little bit of a spin with this. It's not going to be walking you through how to build a metric. It's going to be so much more than that. We're going to talk about mentorship, leadership in there as well, and some things from a quality assurance manager's perspective on just what goes on the back end and what employees maybe perceive and what's really happening. So it's going to be a really good webinar. We've got Betsy McDavid from Emergent Health Partners joining us for that. She's going to be our speaker. And one last announcement, we are seeking candidates up in the UP Upper Peninsula. We want some providers that are going to reach out to us that are willing to do a focus group. We want to look at recruitment and retention in the Upper Peninsula. If you were on this call tonight, you are boots on the ground provider, EMT, paramedic, it doesn't matter what licensure level, MFR. We want people that are currently working the road that can kind of shed some light on things for us. We're going to be doing some research and some projects up there with our partner now that is stationed in Northern Michigan University in Marquette. So without further ado, I'm going to hand the floor over to Aaron. Aaron, I'm your assistant today. I also am happy to ask questions, share whatever you need, just let me know. So it's all yours.
Well, thanks. And thanks, Andrea. Great to see everybody tonight and to spend a little bit of time talking with you about something I'm really passionate about is the MBTI, the Meyers and Briggs type indicator. My name's Aaron Reinert. This is my 30th year as a paramedic. Many of you I've gotten a chance to meet over the years through the Leadership Academy and different things we've been able to do in partnership with Andrea and the folks at the Michigan Office of Rural Health. In addition to being a paramedic, I run an ambulance service day to day. We serve rural parts of Minnesota and Wisconsin, about 1,000 square miles between the two states, about 10,000 runs a year. Met many of you through my role as a partner in Safe Tech Solutions, doing this kind of work and the Leadership Academy and assessments and working with organizations and culture and engagement and leader development. And spend a lot of time working at the federal level through the American Ambulance Association and working with Congress and the 3 federal agencies on EMS kinds of stuff. So tonight we get a chance to talk about Meyers and Briggs. And while it would be great if we were all sitting in the same room and we could have this conversation, we want to definitely make sure we do that even though we're on Zoom. So please feel free to use the chat window if you want to jump into the conversation. You could also use kind of the reaction choices that you have down at the bottom of your screen. So you could use like the what looks like the wave hand kind of thing, or maybe it's clap, but maybe we could use that as the raise hand so that I could see if somebody wants to jump in or make a comment in the chat, or say, hey, Aaron, would you mind calling on me, so that we can include you in the conversation. Want this to be participatory as we can, even though we're remote with each other. So I'm gonna share my screen and jump into kind of the presentation that I have to lead our conversation tonight, but don't in any way want it to feel like any kind of lecture. I'm hoping that you guys had the chance to take the MBTI and you have your results. And if so, that might help provide a little insight into the conversation. So let me just work my way over to here. And Andrea, would you mind confirming that I've got my slide with the 2 Meyers and Briggs folks on it? Excellent. I see a head nod. So let's talk a little bit about Meyers and Briggs. And the first is, I'm kind of curious, for those that had a chance to take it and maybe read a little bit about your 4 types or your type based on those 4 elements, did any of you look at it and go, yep, that's me, or I don't know what that was? So Andrea has been voluntold as someone who would share. So Andrea, if you took it, and I know you did, any confirmations, any surprises, anything that went, I agree, boy, I disagree?
Well, first of all, I think this is a great exercise. So while I was taking it and I was answering the questions, I got more and more excited about what I was about to find out. And I was a little bit surprised, but then I also wasn't surprised. So I ended up being an ESTJ and ended up being an executive. So,
okay.
And as you know, I do have some big dreams when it comes to being involved in an agency in a leadership role, making an impact on the industry and all those things. So I was like, okay, I could see that. But I also thought that I would maybe fall more in the analytic side of things. So
Okay.
I was a little bit surprised, but wasn't completely shocked.
Gotcha. And we as a group will go through what would an ESTJ, what does that mean? I'm an ENTJ. What does that mean? And as Andrea shared, there are sites, and I'll show an example of one that kind of puts these into buckets. And just because that bucket says executive or negotiator or any number of kind of categories, it doesn't necessarily mean that's what we are. or doesn't mean that's not what we are. It's meant to try to reflect some of the strengths, weaknesses of that particular preference. And I start with this concept of Johari window. You see it here down in the corner where I see these 4 quadrants. And they're really, Johari was a psychologist that suggested that when we think of ourself, there's this 4-pane window. And one of the panes, as it knows, or as it says, is the first one that says, there's things we know about ourselves and others know about us. So for those of you that know me and have spent time with me, I know about myself, I like to talk. This is something I enjoy. It brings energy and excitement to me. And you probably would know that about me too. So we both know that. And then the second is things we know about ourselves that others don't know. So there are things I know about myself that you don't. Maybe you will learn them over time as we spend more time together, or maybe I will share them. But there are things I know about myself that you don't. There are things that you know about me that I may not. The classic example is a speaker who too often uses and or where we sit and we count them kind of thing. To them, it's subconscious. They don't even notice it. And we're like, oh my goodness, that was the 6th time, the 7th time, the 8th time. So that might be an example, something you know about me that I'm not as conscious about. And then lastly, there's things I don't know about myself and you don't know about me. We haven't discovered them yet. I often talk, especially with COVID-19, what I'm noticing in the clients that we work with and the folks that I get to work with is that the pinches of COVID-19, the death by 1,000 paper cuts, often is exposing parts of ourselves that we didn't realize. Maybe our tolerance is down, all of our nerves are rubbed raw, our ability to hold things back, the inside voice versus the outside voice has gone away, and all of a sudden something comes out. I didn't know this about me, you didn't know this about me. So as you think about that, just ask yourself, did this confirm anything? Did this create any surprises? I've taken the Meyers and Briggs probably a dozen times over the years. And the answer, generally speaking, or my 4 indicators or my 4 types, always come back the same. However, in there have been times when it hasn't. And I'll mention that. So all of this work really came from Carl Jung. And he spent some time thinking about psychology and really felt that we as individuals have this way of preferencing and processing information. And as a result, certain types emerged. So his work, if you've spent any time looking at it, or if you choose to spend some time looking at it, is quite analytical, very theoretical. So along came Catherine Briggs. So you can see late 1800s into the early 1900s. She was a passionate study of Carl's work and really spent 20 plus years of her life trying to find a way to bring the work into a real meaningful, measurable, practical kind of way. Ironically, her daughter picked up the same passion. And so Meyers is her married name, Briggs is her maiden name. And so her work really took the work that her mother did and together began to create the instrument. Began to say, how might we understand, how might we identify these preferences that individuals have to receive and process information. And I really want to emphasize that, and you will hear me say it a whole bunch of times throughout our time together tonight. It is a preference. Meyers and Briggs, MBTI, is not a measure of intelligence. It's not a measure of aptitude. It is a preference. There are ways I prefer to receive and process information. And I'll talk about those in my own example as I as I unpack these with us together. So it is not, again, an intelligence score. It doesn't say an ENTJ is somehow better than a XXXX kind of thing. Nor does it say, if today my preference is this, that I couldn't become all kinds of other things. If you don't have the style that Andrea has, you couldn't possibly be an executive. Not at all. It simply suggests that there is some connection between certain preferences and certain skill sets. And many of them can still be learned. And I'll, again, try to talk about that in my own preferences and how those bring strengths to me and how those bring lots of weaknesses to me as well. So again, this theory, just as I mentioned, talks about the way we take in information and how we make decisions by it, how we preference it. Often you'll see an example of glasses. Somebody will use a slide of rose-colored glasses, how I might filter the information as I receive it, how we look at the outer world and then process it in our inner world, the stories we might tell ourselves. And each person, Carl would suggest, has these preferences, even if they're unconscious to us. And so it's a balance between the concept of nature and nurture. Nature is what happens inside of me. Nurture is the outside environment. So how I understand information and then choose to process it. So the MBTI is used all over the place. Some businesses use it for hiring. And one of the things I love about being able to give presentations like this is I go and learn again. So I spent a good part of today reading things online, reading other people's presentation, reading different journal articles about it, things in some of the trade magazines for HR professionals and Harvard Business Review. And it was interesting. I read many that said, don't use it for hiring. Oh, bad, bad, bad. And I think what they were trying to suggest is when it's used as a way of saying, Aaron can only fit in this box because of his MBTI, or his intelligence is such based on the MBTI, I would agree. Carl and both of the original authors, Meyers and Briggs, would say that's not its intention at all. But there are certain jobs that certain personality preferences really align well with. And again, I'll try to illustrate those as well as connect those to how we might use this with our teams. How if Andrea and I, and since Ken has his cam on, I can see Ken, if we are the 3-person leadership team for Ken's ambulance service, how understanding each of our Meyers and Briggs, our MBTI, and our team's MBTI might really help us understand strengths of our team, weaknesses of our team, and blind spots within our team. So I'll try to kind of illustrate that as well. But it's really used widely, and again, it's reliability. What I mean by that is, and it's my own example. So as I filled out the Meyers and Briggs over the years, there are times when I've answered it, and so Andrea, be my truth test here. So there's times when I've answered it when it's come back and it said I'm an introvert and I'm a strong introvert. Would you agree? Am I a strong introvert?
No, but I took this test 3 years ago and I did get introvert I remember doing this like 3 years ago and I did score as an introvert. And I remember telling you that and you were like, you're not an introvert. And I was like, well, I don't know why I scored that way. And then we talked about how maybe when you were answering the questions, you were answering them how you want to be versus how you are.
Yes.
So, yeah.
So often, especially when I travel a lot, and when I travel a lot, that means I'm working with groups or teams, or I'm teaching in a class. I'm always on, right? I'm always with people, and I'm always making sure that I'm outwardly displaying myself in a positive way. I'm not sitting around in sweatpants and a raggedy t-shirt, and I haven't done my hair, and I forgot to shave, and whatever it happened to be, I'm displaying a positive outer self. So yes, there are times when I've said, I just want to be by myself. That doesn't mean that I'm an extrovert or an introvert. It simply means, yes, there are times we all need some private time. We all need a little, as you know me and for those that have heard me talk before, we need to be a little selfish, i.e., I just need to take care of myself right now. So its reliability is based on the day and time that you took it and how you were feeling. Having a good day, having a bad day, did the boss just yell at you about something? Did you just put yourself out in front with a big target and somebody nailed you because of it? But its validity is very strong. If you truly, when you answered it as quickly as possible. In other words, to the best of your ability, got your gut instinct, the way you really are, not want to be or aspire to be, its validity is very high. And so its reliability is based on you. Did you tell the truth when you answered it, consciously and subconsciously? And if you did, its validity is very high. So there are these 4 preferences. So the first is this whole introversion, extroversion. Then we have sensing and intuition. So while intuition starts with an I, they use the N. And then we have this next part of thinking and feeling, and lastly, judging and perceiving. Not all of the words are real intuitive of what they mean, but we're going to unpack them. And you see a little bit here, but I want to go into them in their groupings. So this first one, introversion, extroversion, we as a society often characterize it as the bubbly exterior person who talks in front of the group and uses their hands and all of that, which might be the case. And then the introvert who is sullen, is quiet, can't speak in front of a group, etc. Not true at all. That's not what this is about. Now, there may be those components. The extroversion may show up in a certain way and the introversion may show up in a certain way. But what it's about is energy. Where does my battery get recharged? So you may have already noticed, again, as I've self-declared as I'm an E in the introversion, extroversion, that already as I've begun, my energy is going up, my excitement is going up. By the time I'm finished an hour from now, I'll be all wired up from the excitement and enthusiasm of having had this chance to speak with you. Now, my business partner, John Becknell, is a very strong introvert, probably as strong on the scale as you get, but yet regularly speaks in front of groups, leads strategic planning sessions, teaches in our academy, and you would never know it. Many people would not have categorized him as an introvert. So to charge his battery, knowing he might have a full day of teaching or consulting or leading a planning session or a strategic planning session, he'll get up at 5 in the morning, spend maybe an hour reading, go out for a long walk in the morning to bring that time, that quiet time that charges his battery. And then as he works through the day, and I don't mean from a physical exertion, I mean from a mental battery charged, his battery will drain throughout the day. So it's about energy. It's not about the door is shut. It's not about I can't speak in front of a group. What energizes me? What charges my battery? My battery is charged through this kind of thing. An introvert's battery may be charged through having some quiet time to reflect on a conversation, to do some reading, to just contemplate. What was that thing we talked about today? I want to reflect upon it. So, and again, all of Meyers and Briggs is a scale. It's a 0 to 10 on each side. So you may have scored, and you may have seen it in your numbers. If 0 is, I have no preference towards introversion or extroversion. If 0 is the middle, no preference. And many of you may have had where you were equal or very close in the E or the I or any of the numbers. That simply means either you were unsure as you were answering it, or that you don't have a strong preference. Both Jung and Meyers and Briggs would say you have a preference. It just may not be that strong. So the preference can range from a 1 to a 10, either way, right? So you could be an extrovert and you might be a 1, which means not a strong preference. On the extroversion scale, I'm 9 to 10, a very strong preference towards that. So again, it's not about, can I speak in front of a group? It's not about, I get shy in front of groups of people. It's where does my energy come from, or what draws my energy? So the sensing or the intuition, the S or the N, is really about when I need to make a decision. Do I use my gut, my intuition? What's my gut tell me? Or do I seek and gather data? Now again, in all of these are about a continuum. I can use either, right? So I am an EN. So my tendency, my desire, my first inclination is to use intuition. What does my gut tell me? What's my gut instinct? But since I've done this for 30 years and I've led ambulance services for 24 of those 30 years, I know I have to have data. I know I have to go to my board. I know I have to maybe run the numbers. I know I have to go check the clinical indicators, go see what the operational metrics are. My gut might say, boy, this is a good business decision. Maybe about a new opportunity or expansion, or a service that would like to have us become their ambulance service as a transition is happening. My gut may say, boy, that feels right. And then I go build a business pro forma, and I go see if we have the cash to do it, and the community would be interested in us being their provider, and the list kind of goes on. So sensing is, as you can kind of see these, hey, let me look at the data. Intuition might be, boy, this just feels like a great opportunity. And we can use both, knowing that our first instinct is one, and then we might want to go do the other. So someone who is the sensing might say, hey, I need to get that data. I need to get that. And the intuition person will say, well, yeah, but it feels good. And so, again, we can use both. How far might we be one way or another? So that's the sensing versus the intuition, or the S versus the N. So the second, so first is introversion, extroversion, and the next is intuition versus sensing. So the third is really about, again, looking at how we make decisions, and do we do it from an analytical standpoint or from a feeling standpoint? And notice I didn't use the word emotional. Let me unpack that again just in a little bit. So you notice the example, and I love this cartoon because I think it says it so well. I'm not so keen on that first cartoon, but it was the best I could find versus introversion, extroversion. But this is, again, imagine they're screening for candidates. They haven't even met the individual yet. They're looking at a resume, and one of them says, boy, I just like her. And the other says, boy, I really think they have great credentials. So the thinking is, what's the data tell me about this? What are the facts? What are the figures? Cause, effect, rationale, principles, truth, logic. Feeling says, what's my values? What's my morals? What's my ethics? And so the classic example might be the employee who is late 5 days or 5 shifts in a row. The analytic, the thinker, is going to say, it's the 5th time, out they go, or there's some disciplinary action or something like that. Well, the feeler might say, but gosh, what's going on? What's causing this? Do we know that, did their dog die today? You know, gosh, it's this whole COVID in the first days of school. Maybe something came up. Both are right. It's how they're approaching it, thinking versus feeling. And again, it's not black and white. So on a Meyers and Briggs, I am a strong thinker. Again, a 9 or 10 on the scale. So that doesn't mean I don't have any feeling and any emotion, not at all. But it does mean, if I'm honest and owning it, that when I'm presented with something and they come and say, yeah, you know, Aaron's been late 5 days in a row. After the third one, he got a verbal. And then after the fourth one, he got a written. What should we do? I mean, my brain automatically is going to go, out they go. They're fired, right? Progressive discipline. Well, here's the facts. Here's the expectations. I know that that's my strong preference. So I know I need to challenge myself and say, well, how are we feeling about this? What's the other side? Do we have both sides of the story? What's maybe going on? Do we have an understanding of what's underneath of this? Do they need a new alarm clock? Does somebody need to call them at 5:30 so they get here on time? So I know I need to challenge myself that way. A feeler might need to do the same, to say, I know the feelings of this are going to grab my attention and hold me strong. So I might need to challenge myself to say, what's our policy? What's our procedure? What's a progressive discipline that we've done? So I can use both. I may need to challenge myself, especially if my preference is really strong to one or the other. Thinking versus feeling, that's the T or the F. E, N, in my case, T. And the last one is the one I enjoy the most of talking about. I think I enjoy the most as well in my own preference. So J in the judging and perceiving, I don't like the words. They don't, to me, automatically describe, I think, what they're meant. So I mentioned again, ENTJ, so I'm a judging. So judging likes order, they like structure, they like to make a decision about something. So notice in our little cartoons, the judger, the person who likes structure, process, and order, might be really happy that they quickly move things from the inbox to the outbox. I often tell the story, and it'll be interesting if my wife can hear. She's on the other side of the wall making dinner kind of thing. And she believes she's a J. I believe she's a P. P means I'm open to possibilities. I don't know. Doesn't mean I can't make decisions. Doesn't mean I can't order and structure and all of those things. But push comes to shove, I just want to see what the day might bring. So the story I always tell is, you know, I can lay my clothes out days in advance. If I pack for a trip, no worries. Put all of that stuff in there. I can, you know, easily make all of that happen. And I'll say to her, hey, why don't you lay your clothes out the night before? You get up at 5 in the morning, you make lots of noise, you wake me and the cat up. And she says, I can't, because I don't know how I'll feel in the morning. Feel in the morning. I didn't feel like a black pullover kind of thing today. It made sense to wear it. So another example I often give is when I go on vacations. I like to create a little book. And in the book, it will have the day one, here's what we're going to do. And maybe we're going to, let's say we got to go to Paris. And so day 3, we're going to the Eiffel Tower. And so I got tickets for the Eiffel Tower at 10 a.m. and we're going to take the metro to get there. And you take the yellow line and you got off at the stop. It's all laid out. So if day 3 comes along and that's the day we're supposed to go to the Eiffel Tower, and we get up in the morning and she says, I think we should just go get a picnic pack, fill it with food, and go to one of the parks and have a little Parisian picnic. But the book says it's supposed to go to the Eiffel Tower today. See, it's written in the book, and we go to do this, and we do this. So again, it's not that extreme, but the J says, I really like the structure. I like putting it together. I like making that little book. I like moving things from the inbox to the outbox. The perceiving, my business partner in SafeTech, John, is a very strong P. And so when we do the Leadership Academy, for example, we always talk the night before about what we're going to do the following day, and we'll talk it through, and where's the class at, and what do we think is really emerging. And in my mind, we've laid out what we're going to do for the next day. Good, ready, we're good to go. Have our dinner, go our separate ways to our hotel room, get up in the morning, meet in the car, head to the class, and John says, you know, I've had an idea. And the day is shot, in, of course, my mind, because he's now contemplated it, he's thought about it, and what might the world present. And so again, it's not that black and white, it's how we might have our preference one way or another. So putting these all on kind of a large graph, we see on the northern part of this, these types really gravitate towards the possible, what could be. The southern ones, and again, this is painting with a broad brush, and by no means is this absolute. It's again, preference. So the southern ones really tend towards the here and now, the present. And so notice where Meyers and Briggs suggests kind of the supervisor, the charge medic, the frontline leader, the step up, all of those different titles that are out there. Notice they suggest the supervisor lives down in that corner in possibly the ESTJ. And what it simply is suggesting is that that style has sometimes preferences towards the present, logical kinds of things, and providing some direction. Makes sense. That's often what we have, that frontline leader, that frontline manager, that supervisor, that charge medic, that step up. If we look at it in an east to west kind of way, we noticed on the east side, we kind of see things that are the logical, and on the west side, we see the ones that are really have the direct connection to personal relationships. And then you can kind of see they go out to the points, and you see visioning, valuing, relating, and directing. And so often when I work with leadership teams, I have them do Meyers and Briggs, and then I actually put them on this chart. So let me kind of connect how this might show up in a leadership team. But before I do that, I also want to show this 16personalities.com. So don't have any relationship with them. I found it myself when I Googled my own ENTJ and was just curious. You know, if you want to have some fun, Google like who you would be on Game of Thrones, or who you would be if you watched House of Cards, or on The Simpsons, or, you know, pick your particular show. Family Guy, that's the big thing with my supervisors, is they love Family Guy. So in the Game of Thrones, my personality, ENTJ, is supposedly Littlefinger. And so in The Simpsons, I'm Monty Burns. The internet is not kind to ENTJs, and so I'll talk about the shadow side of these. But I wanted to show the 16 personality because I just think it's kind of fun. So I am going to work on my screen sharing here for just a minute and make sure it all comes up correctly. I need to minimize this. And bear with me. I'm working my two screens, so I'm going to stop sharing for a moment and then come back and share again. And share my screen, share the 16 personalities. And so it's a fun little website. They also have the ability to take the Meyers and Briggs. They have modified it slightly. They've added this A and T part to it, and it's really just how they see if it shows up internally or externally. So not sure that I necessarily fully agree with them, but it certainly is just how they kind of see it. So, alrighty. So I just wanted to show the personality types, and I was going to pull up my particular type because I thought it was just kind of fun, and plus then I'll simply pick on myself. So as I mentioned, I'm over here in the ENTJ particular type they call the commander. So I'll click on that, and then we can kind of look at it together and play with it, because I really liked the way it suggests things about, it gives kind of an overview, as well as it talks about strengths and weaknesses. So, and some of them I agree with, some of them I agree that they are both my strengths and weaknesses, and some that I don't. So it just gives this overview. So if we go look at it, and the connection to the Gordon Ramsay clip will become evident here in a little bit. So strengths and weaknesses: efficient, energetic, self-confident, strong-willed, strategic thinker, charismatic, inspiring. Don't necessarily disagree. I think some I'm certainly better at than others. Weaknesses: stubborn, dominant. I think that's certainly true. Intolerant, not sure, but I certainly think that my way is the right way more often than I likely should. Impatient, absolutely. Often one of the strengths of an ENTJ is they can make quick decisions. One of the weaknesses is they make quick decisions. I might make 5 decisions and the 6th one to be the right one, where the introvert might slow down, really contemplate it, really think it through before jumping to a particular decision. The poor handling of emotion is definitely the one I disagree with. I'm not a screamer, I'm not a shouter, I don't get mad, any of those kinds of things. But I certainly get where that comes through. I don't think I'm cold and ruthless, but I certainly have times when I can steamroll people. John Bicknell, again, my business partner and friend, calls it my General Patton style of leadership, that I can just steamroll over people. So, always kind when he shares that. So I wanted to pull the Gordon Ramsay thing in because, as part of this, they give you kind of the, what leaders might you be like? And so they're like, oh, Steve Jobs, yay. Gordon Ramsay. So if you know Gordon Ramsay, he's kind of the chef that screams at you, what are you doing? This is the dumbest thing. Margaret Thatcher, Roosevelt, depending on how you say it. I'm not sure the Jim Carrey thing. I'm not Harrison Ford. Some of these are interesting. Dr. Strange, Tony Soprano. I mean, it's like, The one that I thought was interesting, if you're Netflix, is the House of Cards. So Francis Underwood is the main character in there. He's quite manipulative and not the nicest guy. So I wanted to play this little clip, and I'm going to play it now since we spent so much time trying to figure it out, just for a little humor of the whole Gordon Ramsay. So it has that little connection with Gordon. So let me get back to, and I will share that. So share. We spent all that time making the video work. Now I got to find the video. There we go. And so let me share the video. Hit share. Thank you so much for pointing out the little checkbox that we consistently missed. So helpful. So this is, again, just humor from the Gordon Ramsay kind of reference.
In Austin, it's 60 degrees with its...
Alexa?
Amazon's Alexa lost her voice this morning, causing a
Alexa lost her voice? How is that even possible?
We have the replacements ready, just say the word.
You're sure this is gonna work?
Yeah.
Alexa, show me a recipe for a grilled cheese sandwich.
Pathetic. You're 32 years of age, and you don't know how to make a grilled cheese sandwich. Its name is the recipe, you
Like that.
So that's my little humor for tonight. the Gordon Ramsay example of how to make a grilled cheese sandwich. So thank you for bearing with that. Let me jump back in, and with a little bit of time that I have left, leaving some time for conversation, just talk about the piece of teams and how this kind of connects in with teams. So let me get back. All right, so 16personalities.com. All right, so the whole team's perspective. So I'm going to come back to this slide again. So let's imagine that we as a leadership team have a strong preference towards the feeler. Maybe several of us in the team score someplace in here, and maybe only a few of us score over here. So imagine if that was true, and I'm going to pick on Andrea just in a moment. So let's imagine that we have a team of, let's say there's 4 or 5 of us, and 4 of us all score, all score something that has an F in it. And maybe our score of feeler is stronger, right? It's maybe a 5 or more. And then there's one of us, me, Aaron, who's the ENTJ and scores strong on the thinker side. Could there be conflict? If there was conflict in that team, what might Meyers and Briggs suggest to us the conflict would be about? What do you think, Andrea?
Well, thinking and feeling, I think, so you actually kind of inspired a thought within myself. So I'm a really heavy thinker as well. And when I did get into leadership roles, I was very, I used a lot of logic and not enough F. And I think when there's not a balance between the two, there can be conflict. I think it's almost a strength if you can, and I've tried doing this during my career, especially lately, when working as a field supervisor, you have to have some F in there and some feeling to really understand your employees. So definitely I could see some conflict if you have someone that's a very cut and dry thinker that, you know, wants to immediately go to something logical without considering what's going on with the person or the group. So there could be a divide, yes. But also lots of strength too.
Absolutely.
On a team of all Fs or all Ts.
Yeah, I mean, the question I get all the time is, so Aaron, what's the right mix? And my answer is there isn't, right? It isn't having an equal distribution in these spots. It isn't having as many E's and I's, and it isn't having equal numbers of T's and F's and S and N and J and P. It isn't that at all. It's simply for the team to recognize your preference. And so I have a leadership team that I regularly work with, and all but 2 of them are strong F's. And one of the things that they as a team and as an organization really struggle with is holding people accountable. And so as a team, they just need to own that. And so first they need to own, those that are really strong F, is to say, I'm going to struggle with this because my heart is breaking. I really like Aaron. He's a great guy. And boy, he's been with us 30 years. And yeah, he did an unrecognized esophageal intubation and he covered it up and didn't tell anybody about it. And he stole some meds along the way and crashed the truck and kicked the puppy, you know. But boy, oh, my heart is breaking. And of course the T's are like, we haven't killed him yet. I mean, what's going on here? Why is he still around? And it's just as a team to recognize that and also give it space, right? Give it space. Let the F come out. And also let the F's hold the T's accountable and the T's and such, is to recognize one of the great parts about our team is we're going to have that conflict. And hopefully for the team and or the leader to pull it out, to say, okay, hang on, I know we're going to spend 3/4 of our time on the feeling side because 3/4 of us are the feelers. We need to make sure that we give equal air to the thinker part. And then for the thinkers to make sure we're using that feeler part when we need to, and vice versa. And so similar, you could have conflict with introversion and extroversion. So if indeed the extroversion shows up in such a way where the person wants to hear information, participate, gather information, but then needs time to process it, imagine the conflict. So my director of clinical services is a very strong introvert and a very strong sensor. And I'm, of course, a very strong extrovert and a very strong intuition. So as he and I talk about something, we're having a lively debate, we're getting stuff out there, and I think we've come to a conclusion. But what we've really come to is the spot where he's ready to stop and then go process the information. And maybe tomorrow or a few days from now, he'll come back and say, hey, remember when we were talking about who can use the ultrasounds, or what's the training criteria that's needed, or how to handle that clinical complaint we got the other day? I've been thinking about it, and here's what I think I should do. And I'll go, what? Oh my goodness, I thought we already decided. I crossed that off my list, right? I moved it from my inbox to my outbox days ago. What? Pick you whatever adjective you want and is appropriate for this time of day and day of week kind of thing, right? And so it's just to recognize about each of us. So when we get to the end, I will make sure I understand what comes next. And he will understand at the beginning what I want. So he'll often ask right up front, do we need to make a decision right now? And so I'll give some input. And if we have this big debate and we end, I'll ask, hey, are we done? Or is this the point where you want to spend some time to just reflect upon it? Talked about the thinking and feeling, introversion, extroversion. And so then again, the perceiving or judging. So a leadership team that we work with, a fairly big one, was strong P's. There's probably 25 people on this leadership team because the organization is spread all over this particular state. Strong P's on the team. So ironically, when we would work with them, and we would, at the end, we'd do some strategic planning. Maybe we looked at the employee engagement survey and we said, what are we going to do from here? And we facilitated that. And I wrote things down on the flip chart, and they all agreed to them. It's like, yay, good, we've got a clear path forward. We'd come back in usually a quarter's time and get the team together again and say, hey, I pull out the big flip chart and all the things that are on it. And just want to check in. How are we doing on these things? Nope. What do you mean? Well, we thought of some new things. Because the strong P came out that simply said we're hesitant to lock ourselves in because we don't know what tomorrow will bring. That's okay. But it also just means we have to find that balance. What things can we sit and continue to dream about, imagine what could be, and what things are simply, excuse my language for a moment, the things that are get shit done, right? What are those things that we just have to say, it won't be perfect, it won't be the ideal, but we're just gonna do that because that thing's gotta get done. So I think as a team, I really encourage you guys to do this. Share your Meyers and Briggs with those that you live with and love, share it with people you work with, and then use maybe something like this slide. And thank you so much, Andrea, for sending the things out in advance. Cut, copy, paste, print, use them yourself, no worries. Feel free if you'd like to have the slides themselves to ask Andrea. They're in PowerPoint format. Again, happy for people to use them. But imagine if I went to this chart and started to kind of place people in. I could see, hey, do we have a lot of people that are living in the present versus the possible, the logic versus the personal, or these different spots? Nothing about this chart says, let's say Aaron's the frontline supervisor for our, Aaronville operation, but his Meyers and Briggs was an ENFP. Oh my goodness, we got Aaron in the wrong role. Uh-oh, we better move him. No, that's not what this is. yes, they've categorized the ESTJ as the supervisor only because there are some common characteristics about that frontline role with what shows up in the common preferences of the ESTJ. In other words, they're great working with groups. They have this good sense of the data, what's going on when I need to make, I got a truck going here, a truck going there, and I got 3 calls pending and 6 transfers that have come in, and 3 people didn't show up, and the truck got a flat tire out on highway this and that, and no one fed the dog yet today, and go, okay, I can quickly prioritize that and quickly lay out the troops. And the thinking is, I just need to make some analytical kinds of decisions here, and I like some structure throughout my day. You could just as easily make that same argument for the other side. It just simply means I have a preference this way, and sometimes those preferences line up with what I do every day, and sometimes they don't. Just because I'm an ENTJ and also the executive chief in our organization doesn't mean that one had anything to do with the other. It does mean that I get to use many of those preferences well, but it also means some of those preferences are my shadow side. I am quick to react. I do like to go with my gut. I do have that strong preference towards thinking, and I do like structure. So when things don't match that, I of course do what? I try to align it with what my gut tells me. I try to bring some process, some structure to it, and I try to think my way through it. And so COVID's a great example of this. I'm not going to think my way through COVID. Right now, culture in my organization, I think, is high, but engagement feels really low right now. And I could sit and think my way through it. Oh my goodness, what is this? And I should have 6 other programs, and I should get that going, and I should do this, and maybe I should. But maybe right now, analytic and reasoning won't overcome the emotional response to COVID. It's heavy, it's hard, it hasn't ended. I think many of us, myself included, thought it would. Thought I was going to be able to go. I had a trip scheduled with my wife to Paris. It's our 25th wedding anniversary, and we were leaving on October 6th. We're not now. That feels heavy. That feels hard. I want somebody to blame. I want to, that's my emotional response. I won't think my way through it. So Meyers and Briggs, I love, because it is a great way to know thyself. And it's a great way to challenge thyself. If you go, I'm not that, spend some time saying, am I, but I don't want to accept it, or am I not? And maybe it was just that day and time when I took it. Do my strengths align with what I do every day? And if they do, great. If they don't, is there something that comes next for me? And then how does this show up in teams? If we're having conflict, is it about how we perceive and process information as compared to the person? If let's say Andrea is the strong feeler and I'm the strong thinker, and we're constantly butting heads, and we're automatically going to assume, of course, it's not me, it's her, right? I know we all know that, and so that's just a given here, but we go there versus saying, great person, great leader, love to be around her, love to spend time with her, but why am I constantly butting heads every time Aaron comes in late? She wants to give him a pass, and I think he should get fired. That's how I'm processing the information and judging it. And no right or wrong answer to how a team should be put together. Simply about recognizing who we are and knowing we might as a team have preferences different ways, or if we don't, that might result often in what feels like conflict rather than what should feel like really thinking something through really, really well. Great conflict, productive conflict results in really great results. So thank you for a little bit of chance to talk about this. I know I've, like usual, talked my way to the end of our time, but as time allows, I'd be happy to answer questions, comments, thoughts that folks have. And I'm gonna stop sharing so we can see all of the different folks on here. and be able to see raised hands in the comment box and that kind of stuff. I just got to find my cursor and hit stop share. So thanks. All right, good. Oh, we got comments in here. Okay. The comments about the camera. I get it.
Yeah, the floor is open, guys. Feel free to turn your camera on, raise your hand. If there's something you want to ask or share, or just something you discovered, now is the time. It is 7:01, however, so if you have to run, we understand that as well. So yeah, but hang out, ask some questions. You know, if you have a chance to pick Aaron's mind, now would be the time to do it. I highly recommend utilizing that, that time. So Aaron, I'll just start and see if anybody thinks of something, but I think it's interesting how you brought up the point about how sometimes depending on when you take the test, you might have varying results. And when I think about the time that I took this exam first and the space I was in and just the things that I hadn't yet experienced and had experienced, it's interesting how I had a slightly different score. And the other thing that I looked at too was, oh, here comes a question, is the E and I were almost even. So I wasn't surprised there, because I do find, like, if I spend the day, I love talking as you do, but I find that my battery does drain. Like eventually I'm done and I can feel that, and then I need to be in a quiet space. So, so yeah, those are the things that I took away from the testing. And I almost wonder if it's a good idea for teams and people in leadership roles to take this test maybe every couple years to see if there is some kind of change or variation in the testing and tendencies.
Yeah, it certainly wouldn't hurt if there is a variance or a change. Variance is a wrong word. If there is a change, to simply ask myself, does the score match? You know, take your 4 letters and type them in to Google, and you'll find all kinds of resources from the 16 personalities. Meyers and Briggs has wonderful descriptions of them. Other sites do. And especially if you have ones that are close, write both. So let's say my E and my I was close. So I would type in ENTJ and I'd read about that. Then I'd type in INTJ and I'd read about that. And does one of them speak to me? And if it does, grab that one. But if there is a change, so like when mine's changed, I had to ask myself, am I an introvert? Is that what I like? Is that what brings me energy? No, I go stir crazy if it's just me. But yes, if I'm gone a lot, I'm busy a lot, I do need quiet time. I need that, or I start telling people what I really think about that, which is always bad.
Yep.
Let's see. What if you, awesome. So what if you have 2 the same? My J, yeah. So again, if you have them close, read them. Go type in both of them and read both of them and see if one draws you. Because you have a preference one way or another. It may not be very strong. Now, I was working with a leader who had all 4 tied. E and I was tied. S and N was tied. T and J was tied. Or T and F was tied, and T and P and J were tied. His was wrong. The reason why his was all tied is he didn't know what to be. He knew what he wanted to be, but his bosses were telling him something different. So he was desperately trying to be what they wanted him to be. And my work with him was to say, you have to be who you are. And then you have to ask yourself, does that align with the job and what they want of me? It's kind of the deal breaker conversation. And in his case, it didn't. And so indeed, it was an opportunity for him to say, it's time for me to take the next step, because this doesn't line up for me. Let's see, funny. 2 in the same area. Yeah, so thanks for the questions. Turning my screen off, it was making me look like a Smurf. It was all blue.
Well, it looks like we have some folks starting to sign off. You're welcome to stay on as long as you can, or as long as you want to, but I'm going to stay on for the next 10 minutes or so, just in case anybody has any issues. I can also post the quiz link. I know some of our regulars really like that. So I'm going to go grab that quiz link for you and put it in the chat box. I know some of our folks like to get that done. But yeah, as long as Aaron's here, feel free to just keep asking away and go from there.
Yep, Vicki, you're spot on. Like we always tell National Registry candidates, you know, when you read that question, answer it really quickly. You know, when we read into it, then we start saying, well, but sometimes I like to be quiet walks at night in the rain, on the beach. But, you know, we can analyze it. It is to try to get that gut instinct, because that's what happens in us when we get some information and then we process it. We quickly use that preference. We can teach ourselves to then use the other preference as well. Well, I think I'm going to head out. If there's any other questions for me, please jump in.
And I'm working on grabbing that link if you guys want it. Just hang out, I'll pop it in the chat box. But you know it's at the end of the slides, which also, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I'll just project the slides so you guys can see those.
Thanks, everyone. Stay safe.
Thank you, Aaron. Thanks so much for your time. And good night, Facebook Live. We'll stop streaming. Thanks for joining us. All right. Thanks again, Aaron. All right. So there's the link. It is a PDF, so you may need to copy that. And then let me get the actual link for, interesting. Oh, okay. Where'd it go? Working on it. All right, so there's the link there. Let's go to all right, for those of you still on, here comes the link in the chat box. So you can click that there and complete your quiz and eval right away if you'd like, or you can just go back in and use the slides or use the materials and resources to do that as well. That email that I sent out will have the link to the quiz in it. You have, I usually set it up to be open for about 2 weeks. So you have roughly 2 weeks to complete it. And, oh, did I stop sharing again? I sure did. Too many windows open. Mhm.